welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, the races are set after Tuesday night's runoffs. First, the race for governor. The dust has settled, and now it's Attorney General Jim Hood versus Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves, two of the biggest names in state politics going head-to-head. Reeves defeated Bill Waller, and 12 News' Gerald Harris caught up with Reeves on election night.
The matchup is set between Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves and Attorney General Jim Hood for the race for governor of Mississippi. Reeves believes that he has what it takes to keep the governor's mansion in Republican hands.
Thank you, Mississippi!
Tate Reeves now has his attention zoned in on Jim Hood in the November election.
Now we're about to begin a very tough campaign this fall. The stakes are high for Mississippi.
Reeves hopes this election is about the issues facing Mississippians.
Obviously, we have very different visions for the future. The National Democrats and their liberal allies have lined up behind Jim Hood. The conservative people in Mississippi are lining up behind me. And so there'll be a very stark contrast in this general election. And I look forward to having that conversation because I believe in my heart that Mississippians are conservative and they're going to elect a conservative governor.
Both Hood and Reeves are going to try to court Justice Bill Waller Jr. voters. Now, Election Day is November 5th, and remember to stick with 12 News as your local election headquarters. Reporting in Jackson, Gerald Harris, 12 News.
Well, several issues will be in the spotlight, including health care. And the day after the runoff, Jim Hood took his message to voters in Jackson. Gerald has that story from his event.
Attorney General Jim Hood says Reeves went up against a judge. Now he's facing a prosecutor, saying Reeves lacks solutions.
He's just throwing around labels because he doesn't have any program to deal with the health care crisis that we're dealing with.
Hood joined medical professionals at the Jackson Medical Mall to advocate for his health care plan.
Costing us now one way or another, and we've got 31 hospitals in jeopardy. We've had 5 closed. We've had 5 in bankruptcy, and one of them is up near where I'm from, up in Amory. That was a wonderful hospital. And so we've got to change this. And I think that there's a coalition of people, be it people in the Delta in different places, Republicans and Democrats.
He's hoping the issues will be front and center.
Lines will be drawn in this race where I'll be pointing out where they're not telling you the truth. They're just throwing around labels, trying to scare people to death. And we're going to be talking about issues, and one of them certainly front and center is going to be health care.
And after they spoke, he's hoping for Justice Bill Waller Jr.'s endorsement.
And I'm proud of the issues that he ran on. He ran on the issues. But we saw Tate Reeves doing nothing but just throwing around labels and, talking about things that just inflame people.
Hood's internal polling shows him ahead in the race. In Jackson, Gerald Harris, 12 News.
Well, we reached out to the Reeves campaign after the event. It released a statement saying in part, quote, Hood is pushing the Democratic Party line that government health care expansion is a free magic solution. It is a lie. With Jim Hood running for governor, his attorney general seat is up for grabs. Treasurer Lynn Fitch emerges from a tight runoff race with Andy Taggart. She'll take on Democrat Jennifer Riley Collins. 12 News' Jade Blexick caught up with Fitch Tuesday night.
Mississippi State Treasurer Lynn Fitch was greeted by a room full of supporters. She thanked those who have been there with her along the way.
We have done this. This has been a group effort.
She says she has maintained a positive campaign and she'll keep it that way looking ahead to the general election.
They want a strong leader who's looking for how you lead in a positive way. We've got a lot of things going on across our state and looking for someone to be the managing partner of the state's largest law firm because it's a very complex office that touches all lives across Mississippi.
And in November, she'll face Democrat Jennifer Riley Collins. In Ridgeland, Jade Blexick, 12 News.
Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. When we come back, breaking down the race for governor and the other runoff results, our panel tells us to expect some fireworks, and we'll be right back. And welcome back. Tonight, we're breaking down the election results with two people very familiar with this process. Keith Hurd, the president of Key Impact Strategies, one-time chief of staff to the late Senator Thad Cochran, and Democratic State Senator John Horhn, representing the 26th district here in the Jackson area. Now, earlier this month, he won the Democratic primary and is running unopposed in November. Keith, let's start with you, and we get right to the governor's race. Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves, emerging after running against Bill Waller. Kind of, how does that play out? He had a tough primary, but what does that mean for Tate Reeves?
Well, he had a resounding victory last night. When you win by 10 percentage points, that's a landslide. The narrative, the whole race was it's a tough race. Judge Waller is going to give him a tough race, and it just didn't prove to be that way. He won 49% of the vote to 34% in the first primary and beat him soundly this time. So it really wasn't that tough of a primary if you look at vote totals.
But he was primaried, and what does that mean going forward, that he had to kind of fight his way through? Because initially we thought it was just going to be him running through this primary and then going on into the general election.
Well, you know, I'm one to think that primaries make you a better candidate and a tougher candidate, and I think he spent a lot of money in the primary, but with that said, the issues are the same in that primary as it will be in the general election, so it wasn't money wasted. Would have been better if he had not had the primary, yes, but he had one and he won soundly.
When you look at the map and how it was broken down, we were just kind of looking at that map there, and you're seeing that a lot of the educated voters kind of went to Waller and everyone else kind of went to Tate Reeves. How does that play out in the general election, do you think?
Well, thank God I must not be an educated voter, because, but the university towns did go for Judge Waller, and we'll just have to work on that, and I'm sure most of them will come home when you get to the general election.
Yeah, and Senator Horhn, what does this mean for Jim Hood as we're looking at this, and how does he navigate the map with what Tate Reeves done?
You know, what we were told early on, and even as recently as the last couple of weeks, was that Attorney General Hood would rather face Tate Reeves than former Justice Waller. And whenever I heard that, I was a little surprised by it, because I think with Tate Reeves comes a big purse of spending cash that he'll have. I think it also means President Trump will make at least one, maybe two visits to Mississippi to help Reeves in his election. So the Hood has got to find a way to excite and get some passion behind his campaign, particularly in the black electorate. The black electorate is supportive, going to be supportive of Hood for the most part, but folks are not just hot red in their enthusiasm. He's got to find a way to stoke the fire. So
voter turnout is going to be a big key come November.
Turnout is going to be critical, and I would say that turnout in Hinds County for Jim Hood has got to be just a tremendous turnout.
How does he flip some of those, or get some of those Waller votes? Is it key that he get some Waller votes, or how's that work?
Well, you know, Waller took Central Mississippi, and that's up for grabs, I think, in this general election coming up. I think Hood has got to articulate an issue that excites people. If he lets Tate Reeves dictate the tone and what the issues are, I don't see a happy ending.
Yeah, one of the things that Jim Hood said yesterday in his little press conference that he had is that he will throw some rocks. So do you think this race is going to get ugly come this fall?
It certainly could, and I would pick my fights carefully if I picked one with Tate Reeves, and he's going to stick to the issues and move forward, but it's going to be a tough race. But Tate Reeves can win, he will win, and the policies that were debated in the primary are going to be the same policies debated in the general election, and we'll just see how the rocks fall.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's going to get ugly?
Oh, no doubt about it.
And what about money? Because I know that we had talked a lot about yesterday. We said that there's going to be millions of dollars spent, outside money that could be coming to the state. How much money do you think is going to be spent on this race?
If Hood doesn't get a lot of outside money, his campaign does not stand a great chance, because he's being outspent by Tate Reeves. Tate has a war chest right now. His war chest is going to get bigger. Hood has got to develop a bigger war chest.
Mm-hmm. And how much money do you think is going to be spent on this campaign?
Lieutenant Governor Tate's already spent about $3 million, and I think he'll spend another $5 or $10 million in the race. And John is right. If for Judge Hood to win, he's going to have to spend a lot of money and get going. And I just don't see him raising the money.
It's not going to come from inside Mississippi, I don't think. There's going to be money from the Democratic Governors Association, perhaps, and the DNC. But if he does not find that money outside Mississippi, I don't see it in him being able to raise those coffers inside the state.
And you know something else about money, I suspect President Trump's going to be down here a couple of times for the lieutenant governor. That's worth no telling how much money in a campaign. You can't quantify it, but I think you'll see that setting the country, the state on fire. And General Hood just does not have anybody in the national party that can come down here for him.
Why is this race so important on the national level for outsiders to come in and be a part of this race?
Well, you know, I think people say Mississippi is a red state, but Mississippi has a lot of potential to becoming a purple state.
That's right.
Where there will be some victories amongst Democrats and victories amongst Republicans in important races. And I think that this is going to be a real testing ground as to what the future of Mississippi is going to be. Are we going to stay red? Are we going to move closer to becoming purple in this race? And this November race, I think, has a lot riding on it.
Is that what you think too?
Yes, a whole lot riding on it nationally. I mean, just look at what's happened in Georgia this week. Yesterday, Senator Isaacson has announced his retirement at the end of the year. If Stacey Abrams would have won the governorship in Georgia just last year, she would be making the decision of who's the next senator for Georgia rather than the Republican senator.
Absolutely.
And so the Senate is closely divided. So if you take a sure Senate seat from Mississippi away and put a Democrat in, you can see the Senate going Democratic and the state being hurt. This is national politics.
Right, so all eyes. There's only 3 states right now that have races for governor right now, and we're one of all eyes are on Mississippi.
Yeah, I love it.
You love it.
I love it.
So we still have a big fight going on, so a big-time fight between the 2 very popular and well-known opponents going into
They're the 2 big gorillas in the room, those 2.
And none of them have lost the statewide race as of that way.
That's right.
So we're going to see how it plays out.
It's going to be fun, isn't it, Senator?
I think we'll see some fireworks for sure.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. All right, we'll have more with you when we come back, and we'll be right back right after this. And welcome back. We are breaking down the election where we're here with Republican strategist Keith Hurd and Democratic Senator John Horhn. Let's swap roles here a little bit. So, Keith, if you were a strategist against Tate Reeves, what would your strategy be to defeat Tate Reeves?
Well, that's not fair.
We're going to give him the same question,
that's
too.
Right, that's
We're
right.
swapping roles here.
Well, I think, you know, he's got to activate his base. He's got to get a lot of outside money in place, and he's got to go after the Waller vote and try to peel them back and try to paint Tate as too conservative, unyielding, unbending, and move forward. I just think he's got a hard road to hoe, and I'm glad I'm not going to be that strategist.
All right, same question for you. What would you do to defeat Jim Hood?
To defeat Jim, I think you take away his conservative base. He does have one, and that's how he's been elected Attorney General all these years. I think that you do what the governor is doing, what the lieutenant governor is doing, which is putting Washington on Jim Hood, just attaching Washington to Jim Hood and aligning him with the Pelosi's and the other Democrats at the national level, Schumer, those folks. I think also with Hood, you're going to have to outfox him and outfight him. And I think Tate Reeves is looking like he's ready for that fight. If I were Hood and I was trying to go after Tate Reeves, I would deal with the road issue, the road to the House and all that, and I would try to articulate an issue that Tate has not come up with, and that grocery tax reduction I think it could be a winning issue for Jim Hood.
When we talk about infrastructure and we talk about teacher pay, and we've been talking about health care, that was a big issue in the GOP runoff here in the primary. But in the general election, how is that going to play out on those three issues? How important is that going to be to voters in the general election?
Well, I think it's going to be very important, and I think the Lieutenant Governor is going to have to make the case, and people need to understand that the infrastructure bill that he passed and the governor passed and the Speaker and the whole House and Senate passed last year was a good bill. It's $200 million more a year on top of $1 billion that the highway MDOT has now. So they've passed a good bill. It's $1 billion infrastructure package, and that's real money. And then if you throw in Medicaid expansion, that's another $200 million, and you throw in something else that costs more, and the state just can't afford it. And that point's going to have to be made over and over and over.
Well, you know, we've got close to 18 hospitals that are at threat of closure. I think that if I were Hood, I'd wrap that around Tate Reeves' neck. We've got all these rural hospitals that are in danger, and expanding Medicaid is one of the solutions to helping those hospitals out. The $200 some odd million that we're getting from last year's special session, if I were Hood, I'd be saying that's not enough. The conservative Mississippi Economic Council said the number was really closer to around $380 million that was needed just to maintain what we've got. And then the issue of education, fully funding the adequate education funding plan ought to be something that is prioritized. And the fact that we're moving further and further behind in our education in Mississippi, that argument for full funding of MAP ought to be front and center as well.
You know, I'd like to know what is the right amount to spend on education. We spend 42% of our state budget on education. Should it be 60%? Should it be 70%? I mean, at some point you have to make decisions on where you spend your money. And we're working hard to make sure the education program works. We're moving forward, trying to do things. But at some point, what's the number? If 42% isn't enough, what is enough?
Well, some will argue that to get to the southeastern average, you have to spend more than the other states because they're so far behind. So how do you get to that? How do you
With
get to
teacher
that level?
pay raise,
they're constantly increasing their salaries as well.
Right.
So how do you get to that level to meet the southeastern average if you're only given a certain percentage like everybody else is around you? So how do you make that?
Well, we'll just have to keep giving raises. They've got an $8,000 raise a year for teachers over the last 8 years, and we need to keep doing that as we can afford it.
Well, and you know, I would also, if I were Hood, I'd make the case that the economy in Mississippi has not grown at the pace to keep up with our neighboring states. And as long as we're trailing behind in terms of our gross state product, and the other states are going further and further with building up their revenue, the only way that we're going to catch up is with innovative workforce development,
right,
with putting more money in education, and also attracting more than just smokestacks into Mississippi. We need some technological jobs that will help us grow the economy.
Any other races catching your eye here? I know in the primary there were some interesting races in the Attorney General's race, and like the Lieutenant Governor's race, that seemed like an interesting race there, or the Attorney General's race. Any other races catching your eyes?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that the Lieutenant Governor's race, you know, may have some play in it, but I don't see a whole lot. And then the other races, I think you'll see all 8 statewide being Republicans in November.
Well, you know, and going back to that purple possibility, if Hinds County voters, 182,000 strong, if they decide that they're going to raise the voter participation from the 42% that we saw 4 years ago up to 65, 70%, they will affect any fairly close statewide race, and we might see a lot of surprises.
I love Hinds County, and I think we were able to convey how we really feel to the public. And I think the public, they are always the same. it's only so much faking and shaking you can do with the public. They're going to find out about you, and they're going to know whether or not you're sincere or not. And I believe that was our selling point.
I can hold the torch up and hold my head up and say we did a lot for Hinds County. We did more than I think anybody else has. And I just feel that hopefully the torch will not go out, and we're just going to stay strong.
And one quick question, Hinds County Sheriff's race, Lee Vance, top the incumbent, what was your reaction
It's
to that?
to lose right now. I was not surprised with his defeat of Victor Mason. There were a few missteps on the part of Sheriff Mason that I think caught up with him. Plus, Vance is very likable. He's very approachable, and I think that played in his favor. He's been a long-standing law enforcement journeyman, and I think that was an asset for him as well.
All right.
But I don't see. He's got an independent and he's got a Republican in the general. I think that Vance won't have much trouble there.
All right. Interesting fall coming around the corner,
Yes,
so
indeed.
it continues, doesn't it?
It continues.
All right. And we'll be right back. A reminder, 12 News will host a Lieutenant Governor debate next month in our studio. It will be between Republican Delbert Hoseman and Democrat Jay Hughes. The debate will be Thursday, September 12th at 6:30 right here on 12 News. Thanks to Keith Hurd and Senator John Horhn for joining us, also Gerald Harris and Jay Belexer for their reports, and to you for watching. Tune in next Saturday night for another edition of Mississippi Insight. We'll be talking with Hattiesburg Mayor Toby Barker, and we'll have an update